We're calling the meeting to order. And up here we have all our council, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, everybody's here. We're having a, Paul's not here. We're having a party and,
That's unusual.
yeah, and Hong Tran on my right and Jack Walsh on my left, who are on the committee. And then our council president and our other 2 council members are here. So we're going to start with the first public comment. Do we have any public comment? No public comment, so we'll go to committee business. Is there any committee business that anybody has? I will mention that part of the item I, 324 and 336, will have some numbers that we've talked about on zoning and how many housing units we have that will be part of that presentation. Okay, we'll move on to item A, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move approval of the June 3rd, 2024 minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item A is passed. We'll now move to item B, Southwest Dash Point Road and 47th Avenue Southwest Compact Roundabout Project Acceptance. Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Chair Dovey, members of the council and committee. I'm here to present to you project acceptance for the Southwest Dash Point and 47th Southwest Compact Roundabout. There we go. Action needed. City Council, get rid of this, I'm not going to be able to read it. City Council must accept the work as complete to meet Washington State Department of Revenue, Economic Security Department, and Department of Labor and Industries requirements. Financial summary is in front of you. Authorized max total is a little over 1.2 million, and we finished just under that, saving about $21,733. Options considered this evening for this project is option 1 or option 2. Mayor recommends option 1 to be forwarded to the July 16th City Council consent agenda for approval. And
Councilmember Honda, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Has this reduced the accidents at that site?
You know, I haven't seen a recent accident report on that.
Or
Probably.
are there less vehicles
It's
going through?
usually less severity of accidents is really what we're looking for.
Or less vehicles going through the
Right.
intersection?
We don't have the new collision data yet to know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, do I have a motion?
Okay. I move to forward the final acceptance of the Southwest Dash Point Road and 47th Avenue Southwest Compact Roundabout Project constructed by Sound Pacific Construction LLC to the July 16, 2024 consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're going to go on to item C, which is SR 99 at 373rd Street Roundabout and Access Management, 30% design report. Mr. Cole.
Yes, sir. Again, council, members of committee, thank you. This is the 30% update on the roundabout project on State Route 99 and 373rd. Policy question I have for you this evening is, should the council authorize staff to proceed with the design of the Highway 99 at South 373rd Street Roundabout and Access Management, return to LUTC at 85% design for further reports and authorization. A little background on this project, provides roundabout at the intersection, like we said, at Pack Highway and 373rd, just south of the old truck scale there. Roundabout is proposed to serve as partial countermeasure to the fatal and serious injury collision history at this T intersection. A little overhead map of the intersection that we're dealing with. Progress to date, I've been able to accomplish a topographic survey. We just submitted 30% design to WashDOT for their review and are ongoing with WashDOT. Ongoing tasks that I'll be working on is utility coordination in that corridor, preliminary contract specifications, like I said, 85% design, and then Also, actually, it says NEPA here. It is actually a SEPA that'll be required for application and approval in that area. So available funds, about $2.5 million that we've received from TIB grant, ARPA of $800,000, TC4 sale proceeds, a little over $700, traffic impact fees of $665, and future CIP budget brings us to just over $5 million in available funds. Estimated expenditures of the standard with 20% contingency this early in the project, a lot of unknowns, brings us to a little over about $6.2 million. That leaves us 1.16 shortfall at this point, still early in the project. As we proceed with the design, total project costs will be refined and presented at the 85% when I come to visit you again. Options considered is option 1 or option 2. Mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the July 16th City Council consent agenda for approval.
Councilmember Walsh?
Is there a realistic possibility of any additional grants that may go towards this, that fill in that last 1.1 million?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay, all righty. And what is the, if things go planned, what would be the timeline for actually beginning, construction of it?
Next summer, summer 2024.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Hondo?
Hi, thank you. TC4 was, what was TC4?
It was the parcel next to the parking garage in the downtown core that Sound Transit had donated to the city, and then they bought it back to expand the Sound Transit parking garage.
And we voted to put the money into this?
Correct.
And the state isn't going to give us any funding?
We keep asking. I mean, as of now, the answer is no, but I mean, we keep asking. That's been on the council's legislative priorities, and was proposed to be on there again this year, but as of now, the answer is no.
So how much money would we request from the state?
I believe we've been asking for $2 million.
Okay, I think if council members individually went to our state representatives and state senator, it might be helpful. I think they'd listen to us. I know I've talked to them about it, and they're willing to talk about it. Just a suggestion.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, didn't Representative Jamila Taylor put money towards this at some point, or am I thinking something different?
Not that I'm aware of. There was a conversation about partially funding some of this, but that didn't come to
But
fruition.
it didn't happen? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Council President?
So it sounds like it's something we should put on our legislative agenda as top priority. What about, because if it's a dangerous intersection,
It was on last year, so I mean.
so we're going to have to really reiterate this year. Here we are.
Yes.
We can't ignore it anymore. I was just thinking, what on earth would we be doing in this community if we had not incorporated with dangerous, where would we be finding $5 million? They wouldn't be just giving it, we would just have people dying in this community. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to the July 16, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we'll move to item D, which is Lakota Middle School Safe Routes to School Southwest Dash Point Road Project Acceptance. Mr. Mulkey.
Thank you, Chair Dovey, committee members, council members. My name is John Mulkey. I'm Senior Civil Engineer for the City of Federal Way, and I'm doing the Lakota Middle School Safe Routes to School Project Acceptance. So just a little quick before and a little after picture of what we've done out there. So we've done some really good improvements for the people utilizing that as a route to get to the school there. And the policy question is, should the council accept the Lakota Middle School Safe Routes to School Southwest Dash Point Road project constructed by Active Construction Incorporated as complete? The maximum contract amount was $2,289,638. We ended up $23,000 under that maximum amount. The option considered, or option one, is approve the final acceptance of Lakota Middle School Safe Routes to School Southwest Dash Point Road project constructed by Active Construction. Or two, do not approve final acceptance and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends option one, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, seeing no questions, do I have a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward the final acceptance of the Lakota Middle School Safe Route to School Southwest Dash Point Road project constructed by Active Construction, Inc. to the July 16, 2024 consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item E, Pacific Highway Non-Motorized Corridor Phase 1, South 304th to South Dash Point Road Bid Award. Mr. Mulkey.
Yes, again, thank you, Chair Dovey. And again, this is the Pacific Highway Non-Motorized Corridor Phase 1, South 304th to South Dash Point Road Bid Award. And the policy question is, should the council award the Pacific Highway Non-Motorized Corridor Phase 1, South 304th Street to South Dash Point Road project to Active Construction, Inc., the lowest responsible bidder? 7 bids were received and opened, and they were the low bidder. It was actually very close by less than $1,200, with their low bid. The project budget shows that we have, we are requesting a transfer with the original budget that we have of $550,000. We'll make our total budget of $3,655,000 to cover extra costs that we weren't anticipating. And the options considered are, again, award or reject, and the mayor recommends option one. I'm available for any questions.
Council President.
Well, you've got South 304th to South Dash Point Road, but is there a cross street? Because it depends on where you are on South 304th.
Well, it's along the 16th Avenue corridor, so it's going along the west side of 16th Avenue between South 304th and South Dash Point Road is where this is going to be done.
Isn't it along the east side, or the east side of Sacagawea Middle School? Isn't that the area?
Well, yes, but over 16th Avenue goes up between Dash Point and going up to the high school. So it basically can connect basically down where Sacagawea is up to the high school area along 16th Avenue.
So it's actually a side street that you're
Yes.
non-motorized. So
Yes.
when you say sorry. Okay. Non-motorized, when you say non-motorized, you mean for bikes?
Bicycles, pedestrians, that kind of
And
thing,
are you
yes.
talking about those little pictures you're putting in the road, or are you actually talking about sidewalks, or?
That's a 12-foot wide asphalt core path that we're installing. So it'll be in areas right now, there's either sidewalk or a narrow path, and we're putting a 12-foot wide asphalt path along the entire stretch of that. And then this is phase 1, and it'll extend down to 308th, and it'll extend up to 288th Street as well when we're finished. So it'll be a pedestrian or non-motorized corridor separate from Pac Highway that
Okay.
be used for transportation or alternative
Okay.
routes
I'm
for stuff.
Vaguely remembering this. So are you actually purchasing property?
Yes, we have purchased property and for phase 1, and there's additional property that we need to purchase for phase 2. So we've already purchased the property for phase 1.
Next time you bring it up, would you, for phase 2, would you bring a map or something so we can
Yes.
visually see it?
Yes,
That'd be
sorry
helpful.
about that, no problem. Yep, I can, oh, here's that one. How's that? That's the actual vicinity map where we have, that shows, I can zoom, but that's the basic for phase 1.
So this is basically taking out the path that's on the side of Sacagawea on the east side, going up from Dash Point Road up to the high school.
Yeah, it'll be
By-
replaced, that's
Up by
like
the
a-
tennis courts and in front of Grace Church there, and we're improving it, and we're probably gonna take that big ditch that people could fall into and cover it, I'm hoping, or something, or maybe
Well,
not.
there's going to be a ditch because we have to use, but we're going to build a new ditch. It's going to be with new storm drainage, and then, but again, it'll be a 12-foot wide path with safe edges and stuff like that, so it won't be a drop off into it either. And it's a lower slope, more of a swale, than it is a steep ditch.
And then
too.
it connects into the pathway that's in Sacagawea Park that they
Yeah,
call
those connect
the
to that.
Warrior 1 Mile or whatever it is.
Yeah, it'll connect into those pathways and then eventually connect down to 288th. And like I said, we're going to extend it down behind and run it up north from there in phase 2.
Good, thank you. Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So how is the street there impacted? Is the street,
We're not going to touch basically the street at all. All the work's going to be done outside of the shoulder. So there's going to be, the ditch line is basically, that edge pavement's going to maintain exactly where it is on 16th. And all the work's between the edge of pavement and the right-of-way line.
I'm hoping that the students from both Sacagawea and Federal Way High use it when it's completed, because it's much safer than Pack Highway.
Oh, yeah, and we are getting a Safe Routes to School grant for construction, so that's part of the funding.
Thank you.
One thing, on the roadway, we are reducing the speed limit and adding some speed humps in order to make it safer for the non-motorized users as well.
Even nicer. Wow, thanks.
So,
Okay, seeing no,
Yeah.
oh, one more question.
Yeah, it'll still be on the west side of 16th,
correct.
right?
The
Okay.
same place that it is
Okay.
now, just be much wider, better use.
So I have a motion?
I move to forward the award of the Pacific Highway Non-Motorized Corridor Phase 1, South 304th Street to South Dash Point Road Project to the July 16, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We'll now move to adoption of the Southwest King County Trails Plan.
Good evening, Chair Dovey and council members. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm presenting on the Southwest King County Trails Plan. So the policy question is, should City Council adopt the Southwest King County Trails Plan? So a little background on how we got here. Over the past few years, City Public Works and also the consultant who was involved in the project has reviewed the regional trail and non-motorized plans from various jurisdictions in the area, including King County, obviously the city, as well as Des Moines, Auburn, Kent, and other jurisdictions that are border or nearby to Federal Way and are in the southwest portion of the county. It was evident that there's a pretty large gap in the trail system between both the King County, the southwest King County, and also into Pierce County and the north side and east sides of the greater county of King County. Part of this discussion involved, obviously, the light rail coming into South King County and Pierce County, and it's an important component to make sure that we get people to and from those light rail stations. And so the city went out and submitted a project to PSRC, and we were awarded that. And it's a planning level study for a trail network that includes Southwest King County, Federal Way, to address the identified gaps and needs that we found through our plan review. So part of the project involved, obviously, public engagement and interaction with the citizens and residents of the area to make sure that we're addressing what they need and what they want. That included our involvement at our comp plan open houses the past couple years. We included an online survey through our Engage website. And we also had in-person and public pop-ups, including at the Federal Way Farmers Market back almost a year ago in July of '23, as well as at the BPA Trailhead over by King County Aquatic Center to engage with trail users. On top of that, we had the technical side, the technical engagement, which included a steering committee involving several community leaders and groups, as well as interacting with the jurisdictions themselves, agencies, through meetings and interviews. So as I mentioned, as part of the actual project, besides what city staff did prior to the project beginning, the consultant also took a look at the plans and various policies and existing conditions, the current state of the trail network in Southwest King County, and looked at the possible opportunities and constraints that exist. And the big emphasis was increasing access, connectivity, and equity, and in the lens of equity as well. So the project looked at several corridors, and some of them were mostly internal to just the city of Federal Way. And then we also looked at how we connect regionally and externally to the jurisdictions bordering the city. And through that process, we had a project prioritization, including, like I said, connectivity. We looked at user experience, equity, feasibility, constructability as part of our criteria. And as the project wrapped up, the main component of it involved looking at getting conceptual designs of 3 corridors. And the first one, the 16th Avenue South between South 288th, basically continuation of the project that John was talking about earlier, north to the city limits at Des Moines. And then Corridor B, Weyerhaeuser Way, between South 349th, which is King County, up to South 320th. And then the third one is South 336th Street, between First Way / BPA Trail to Weyerhaeuser Way. And then the last component of the project is involving a final report, which we have and reviewed, and is final. Here's a map of what the corridors that we looked at as a project team. And the highlighted ones are in green, which are the 3 that I referred to, corridors A, B, and C. The other corridors are ones that we value and believe are potential ones for the future, but we had to kind of narrow down some ones that we want to focus on in the short term that we could get started on sooner than later. I'll leave this up there just for a second so you guys can take a look at it. But yeah, so Corridor A is extending from South 288th, which is where the current trail project that John was referring to is ending. And so it'll continue on there up through Des Moines to try to connect through their 16th Avenue bike lanes in their jurisdiction. And then Corridor B is Weyerhaeuser Way. And the hope is that eventually when we get to connect to the other jurisdictions, whether it's King County or Auburn, that those will eventually get over to the interurban, which is a huge north-south trail. And that was one of the biggest comments that we got from a lot of the users, the trail users, and the citizens, that the interurban is an important destination. And then the last one is Corridor C, which is an east-west corridor, which is important because it gets us, under I-5, across I-5, if you will, in this case, which is a major barrier. I-5 is obviously a major barrier to get across when you're talking about non-motorized travel. As you can see, though, on the map, though, we've got all the existing and future or planned trails, bike lanes, and whatnot that's referenced in the comp plan. But the main highlights are the ones that are the thicker lines, the colored lines that have the letters for the corridor identifications, because those are the ones that were identified specifically in this plan, not the comp plan per se. So, next steps. Like I mentioned, we've got the final plan in hand, final report. The contract actually ended just yesterday. I spoke to the consultant today just to kind of wrap up the last few remaining parts of the project. And I'm here before you to present and hopefully go forward to City Council for adoption. This plan is going to be referenced in the comp plan update in November. And then we are actually in currently pursuing funding to design one of the corridors already. We've applied for PSRC funding, which was approved by council back in April to move forward with that. We haven't gotten notification if we've won that design money yet, but I've heard pretty good positive things that we're up there on the top of the list for that. So, yeah, so that's very promising. So, Mayor's recommendation is to adopt the Southwest King County Trails Plan. And I'd like to just real quick on a personal note say I want to thank Desiree for letting me take on this as a project manager. This was her baby, little baby, I think, starting out a few years ago, and I was real honored to take this on. I think this is a really important project. It takes a really big step forward for the city and Southwest King County in general as a region. And it was, I think, a very positive project, very well done by the consultant. And I was honored to be a part of it. So thank you very much, and I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah. Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, since it's, the BPA trail is an integral trail in the city, why isn't that considered part of the plan? If it's only counting parts that are not already done, or what?
Yeah, so, yeah, we recognize that. And so, yeah, the BPA trail is an existing, it currently exists, so it's not a future, trail. But we are working on an extension of the trail along South 324th Street. And it was noted, it's identified there on the map, but since that's already a separate project that's moving forward, that wasn't identified as a new corridor. It's one that's actually currently in process, if you will, to connect to the light rail station. So while it's related, it's separate from a new corridor that we identified in this specific plan itself.
So the plan is only for new stuff, not how it integrates into existing stuff?
Well, it definitely, we want, obviously, the whole point of connection, right, is to connect to something that we currently have. So we definitely identify things that we can connect to, like, for example, the existing non-motorized trail plan that John was referring to earlier. That's why this Corridor A was something that would connect to it and can keep the connection and the continuity in place. So, yes, we do talk about the 324th, the BPA extension. It's on the map. But it's not, I guess, a new, in the sense of it's already in process outside of this particular plan.
Okay.
Okay.
With that said, then, I move to forward the proposed option 1, adopt the Southwest King County Trails Plan to the July 16th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, grant acceptance for comprehensive plan update. Mr. Perez.
Good evening, and, let's see, here we go.
So, Mr. Perez, have you ever figured out how many grants you've asked for over the years? That'd be an interesting number to bring forward sometime. Seems like you're always asking here, telling us that we should take some money, so that's great.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing about this one is there's no match.
Yeah, see?
Technically, so,
Somebody should do a tally.
yeah. But it seems like we did add some up not too long ago. I can't remember what the number was, but
Okay. It's a big number, I'm sure.
it's in the millions. So policy question is, should the council authorize the mayor to accept the formula grant for completion of the transportation element of the 2024 comprehensive plan update? So Department of Commerce was basically handing out by formula amounts based on a city's population, and Federal Way was essentially authorized to accept $325,000. So the first half of that was used by Community Development Department. And so we get the second half, and Commerce is requiring a separate contract for that. So the work has been done. And, the consultant we had was quite a bit more than the 162.5. And we had anticipated that with adoption of the budget. So there's a budget to cover the entire project between this and the grant money. Because of workload constraints and negotiating the scope of what would be included in the grant as opposed to what we already had in the consultant contract, took a while to negotiate, and that's why we're asking for retroactive approval of accepting this grant. The work is done, it's been submitted to the state, and actually, we're supposed to submit an invoice to them by Friday. So, options considered is to approve acceptance of the proposed grant agreement, or option 2, do not, and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation is option 1. That, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, is anybody bewildered, confused, or lost? If not, could I have a motion?
Even though
Chair.
I'm bewildered, confused, and lost on many things, I'm willing to make a motion. Oh,
I can do it.
okay, go
You're
ahead.
up.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed grant acceptance to the July 16, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To item H, the joint use operation and maintenance facility authorization to award. Ms. Winkler.
Good evening, Chair, committee members, Council President Honda, council members. I'm going to share my screen here in a second. Hold on. There we go. Yes, and I am excited, and I am grateful to all of you for moving this project forward. I'm here to request authorization of award of the Joint Operation and Maintenance Facility. Policy question, should City Council award construction of the Joint Operation and Maintenance Facility to Corp. Inc. Construction Company, the lowest responsible bidder? On June 25th, we received 6 bids. The apparent low bidder requested and was granted relief from award due to a bid error. If their spreadsheet macros were working properly, their bid actually would have been $5 million more than their submitted bid, which would not have made them the low bidder still. The new low bidder is Corp. Inc. Construction Company. They are based out of Salem, Oregon. We have done some checks on them. They have completed projects of similar scope and cost. References were checked and are positive. References they gave to us and references that we found on our own based on some industry questions. We recommend award of the base bid plus additive alternate A1, which is replacing the ecology block walls within the salt shed bunker with concrete bunker walls. So here's all the numbers. As far as revenue goes, we were, and you have authorized a bond of up to $57 million. We proposed to use $53 million. For the frontage improvements, the swim fund paid for their third at a little over $1.1 million. Transportation capital will fund the other 2/3 at around $2.2 million. We'll get franchise utility reimbursement for frontage improvements. We have to drop some lumen cable underground. Sound Transit will owe us some money for the overlay portion of the project of about $195,000. And police will fund their SWAT vehicle building at $335,000 for a little over a total of $57 million. The expenditures are summarized as follows with the construction contract. Total is around $40 million between the on-site and the off-site portion of the project. We recommend a 10% contingency of a little over $4 million. Bid alternate 1 added $122,000 for a maximum authorized contract amount total of $44,130,000. The furnitures, fixture, and equipment that are required are $2.2 million. For construction management and professional services, $1.7 million. Permits and utility fees, $550,000, and reimbursement for the property acquisition. So a total expenditure proposal of $56,580,000. This is the schedule. We've been tracking along well. We are here in July, getting ready to award. We anticipate notice to proceed to be given sometime in August, and with 550 calendar days allowed, we should be able to be moving in early 2026. Options considered: award the joint operation and maintenance facility for the base bid plus alternate A1 to Corp. Inc. Construction Company, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $40,128,296.46, and approve a contingency of $4,001,703.54 for a maximum authorized contract amount of $44,130,000. Or 2, reject all bids and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So I was there when the bids were open. It was an interesting exercise to listen to. So, and then I sent an email asking a question, and I didn't really get a response I got a response, but it wasn't an answer to my email. So alternate 1, 2, 3, and 4, A1, A2, A3, A4. Can you explain what those were and why you're only including alternate A1 in this?
The alternates, and I'm going to get out of here for a second unless you want to go back in. Does anybody want to see the budget again? I'll stop sharing my screen. There were various bid alternates. Bid alternate A1 was for a specific alternative. We use what are called ecology blocks, so literally stacked blocks right now in our salt sheds to hold the pile of salt inside. Those are common, but not super efficient, and they degrade over time because there's a lot of cracks and crevices. And so we requested an alternate for just replacing those with what's called precast concrete bunker walls, which are solid, 10 foot high is what we're getting. They're narrower. It actually provides us more room in the sheds, and they last a lot longer. We only have one salt shed, so we're right now. Alternate A2 and A3 were to add salt sheds 2 and 3. So those came in pretty high, over $500,000 each to add those. So we chose at this time that we're going to reuse we have a large salt tent out there. We're going to relocate that one, so that'll be our second shed. We will have, between the new one that's being built and that one, we'll actually have more storage when we're done than we do currently with our big one and our smaller ones down below, which would be demolished as part of this project. Alternate A4 is for adding in a crane inside the fleet operations building to pick up large stuff, right? The structure of the building is actually being accommodated for an overhead fleet crane, but we didn't know if that was something that we could afford right now, so that was alternate A4. It's not to say that we can't, if contingency spending goes well, that we can consider adding these alternates later on. But at this time, for a couple of reasons, we kind of felt the salt sheds came in a little high in the bids, and we feel like the fleet crane, that's something we can easily add later on.
So ideally, you would have added alternate A1, A2, A3, and A4 to the bid if things had worked out.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question. I understand the discussion on the salt containers, let's call it, but I don't have it in front of me. What was the cost of the crane to put it in from the get-go?
I think that, I have it in front of me. I think it's like 168. So the bid for, I'll find it.
You said 163,000?
Alternate A4, yeah, just a sec. Oh, with tax, actually, it was 180,000 for Corp. Inc. And the other bids, a couple of the other bids came in more like in the $80,000, $90,000 range.
I mean-
So we were looking at that, that's something that we could potentially add later on.
Okay, because it seems to me we're going to spend 57 million, 56 million, a big number. It would just seem that you would figure out to put the crane in at at that time instead of later, unless I'm missing something, mobilization, and
So like Desiree said.
unless that was their big profit piece.
No, I mean, it's an alternate, so it can't be their profit piece. But like Desiree said, the structure is sized, so structurally, the components are all there. They're incorporated and designed into the building. So this is the overhead crane proper. So I think based on where the numbers came in, especially relative to the other bids, we may still look at, depending on how construction goes, making it owner furnished. So we would incorporate it into the overall project cost if everything goes swimmingly. But, you know, at this point, it's also something that, since the steel is all there in the building itself, in the future, the city could go back and retrofit it in fairly easily. And just with the cost where it came in, it didn't seem financially prudent to advance it as part of the base bid.
I don't know, it just seems to me with the way lead times are on product.
Yeah,
and
no,
You've been here about trucks, and it takes 18 months, and,
Your point's well
I
taken.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure, I would think we want to put the crane in the time we build the building so that we have everything we need to do what we need to do. And, you know, we're squabbling over $80,000. I'm sure you can sit down and figure out how to get that done at the same time.
We will try to.
That's just my thought. Council President?
Thank you, Chair Dovey. So I was wondering, Desiree, you know, I'm looking at the engineer, at the bid summary and the bid evaluations. So 2 to 3 of the bidders were pretty much within a couple of million, with pretty much similar, but they were a couple of million lower than, higher than our engineer's estimate. I'm just wondering why there was that's kind of a big difference.
Yeah, we were hopeful. A lot of this is that it takes a while for us to design it. We had a little bit of a delay as we kind of switched locations, and, you know, we were hopeful that potentially the market could tick this down 10% instead of up 10%, but that's just what didn't work out. A lot of, you know, there's a lot of subcontractors involved, but yes, I think we're going to hire you for helping us to evaluate bids. That's exactly the same thing we look at. We look at the low bidder and the difference between the second bidder. If there's a big difference, sometimes we're a little bit worried because it means that somebody missed something. But we're looking at those groupings of that bidder 2, 3, 4, and how close they are together. And they were relatively tight for such a large project. And so we feel a little more comfortable that we're going to go into this with the current low bidder, that they're comfortably being able to build this. And we're going to be able to work together well.
So then my son's a construction manager, so for the state, so my other question would be, you know, how many times have we gone into these bids and then we have changes?
Right.
So are we anticipating?
Well, and that's why we request with all of our capital construction projects a contingency. And this one's, we're requesting a 10% contingency, which is a little over $4 million. And we will do our darndest to, you know, work with them and keep that to a minimum. We are really close on, we were able to incorporate 99% of all the building permit comments during the course of the design and the bidding. So there aren't any big changes there that the building permit reviewers found. So hopefully we kind of nip that in the bud, but there's always going to be something, and that's what gives us, you know, that contingency to work with.
Okay, and finally, where are our employees going to be while during construction?
We're going to be right where we are right now. So Parks Department has moved themselves personally and all of their rigs and all of their equipment and materials over to Steel Lake Park. So if you've been by there lately and noticed more and more vehicles and equipment, that's where they are. They're housed. Public Works, both surface water management, streets, and our swim inspectors are squeezed together at the old fire station. If you have noticed also, they have moved a lot of their equipment, their connexes that we use for storage have all been moved from north to south to get out of the way of the construction, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tron.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the information and congrats on getting this thing moving forward. I do have a question regarding the construction management and professional services.
Yes.
What are those entail?
So we, for certain, are going to keep our designer of record on board. So the architect and all of their sub-consultants need to stay on board so that they are reviewing material submittals and are available in case any changes come about. So that's one. The other is that we hire third-party testers for materials. So whether that be the concrete, the asphalt, the compaction over the utilities, the welding, all those special inspections, we pay a third party to come in and do. And yeah, and in addition, it's, you know, a little bit for us, you know, staff that's got, you know, got to keep an eye on it. Not much. You know, you pay me anyways, right? So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, seeing no more questions, do I have a motion?
Okay. I move to forward option 1 of the July 16, 2024 business agenda for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Get the shovels ready. Okay, we're now going to talk about item I, the South 324th to South 336 land use discussion. Mr. Niven.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members Tran and Walsh, Council President Kochmar, and Councilmember Honda. This evening, we're going to talk about 324th down to 336, kind of packed to I-5. And that conversation is going to have a lot to do with housing. I think basically because a majority of the property is zoned multifamily. And tonight, before we get into kind of looking in detail at the area and having a conversation about that, I want to kind of revisit our housing numbers. We had the special study session last council meeting to talk about housing. And because this conversation is going to focus on housing as well, it seemed like we could kind of revisit some of those numbers before we get to the specific part of the city that we're going to talk about this evening. So our 2044 housing need, so for King County, the total number of housing units to be built by 2044 is 308,677. For Federal Way, our number is 11,260. I think most of you guys know that number by heart at this point, and that makes me happy. And that's about 4% of the total county number. So how do we get these numbers? So it starts with Washington Operation of Finance and Management, and they provide the housing projections, which are then sent to the Department of Commerce. Commerce then distributes those numbers to the different counties within the state. From there, King County distributes the forecast to the cities and in unincorporated parts of the county. And that gets us to that 11,260 number. And for the first time since the adoption of House Bill 1220 in 2021, sorry for a bunch of numbers, we also have to account for our housing need by income band. And so the question is how do we get there and what methodology was used? So the King County Affordable Housing Committee, which is a committee of the GMPC, developed a methodology to create the need by city, and it considers the following 4 factors. So it starts with the overall city need. So for us, that's that 11,260. It then considers the current affordability of the housing stock. In other words, how much is the housing that you can find within our community? It then also considers the amount of regulated housing at 0 to 80% AMI, because those regulated housing units have some sort of covenant or long-term affordability associated with them. So they actually count differently than what you might consider as part of sub-item B here. And then they factor in the ratio of low-wage workers that live in the city compared to the sub-region. All of those things get combined to then give us the specific numbers that we have, as well as every other city. Now, one question that was asked is, okay, so who are these Affordable Housing Committee people? Well, so here's who they are, and I apologize, this is small, but the chair is Councilmember Claudio Balducci, and these are the representatives, including the staff that serve on King County's Affordable Housing Committee. And I can send you this later if you all want this specific list of folks that worked on developing the methodology for coming up with our housing by income band.
So when we look at this list, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 elected officials. Those are the people that put the numbers together?
Those are the people that approved it.
Approved.
So the staff are going to be your subject matter experts down below, as
Right.
well as King County staff.
May I ask a question? Did this go to King County Council for approval?
It went to King County Council for approval. This is part of the countywide planning policies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the way that works out for Federal Way, this is our need by income. So it starts with 0 to 30% permanent supportive housing, that's 946. 0 to 30% non-permanent supportive housing, 1799. 30 to 50% is 842. 50 to 80%, 208. 80 to 100, 981. 100 to 120, 1112, and then 120 plus is 5372. So here's a bunch of more numbers, and this is comparing us to other cities. And what I did here was really just include the housing at 80% and below. So in other words, 80% AMI and below, this will tell you how many units of the total units by city and what percentage that is. So if you look at Federal Way, for us, the number of units at 80% and below is 3795, and out of 11,260, that's 34%. And you can compare that to, say, Kent at 39%, but then you look at some of the east side cities, for example, Kirkland, 88% of their housing needs to be at 80% below AMI. And that's because so much of their housing right now is above 120%, right? So this is intuitive, but it also gives you kind of a comparative between kind of the different cities. And these are the core cities within King County.
You left Bellevue off the list.
Yeah, it was.
Because Bellevue's Bellevue and Seattle are not on the list because they're metropolitan cities. So their housing numbers are just completely different than this group that's in this list. These are all considered to be comparable cities by kind of PSRC's metrics. And I could give you Bellevue and Seattle if you want. I don't have them. Oh, I actually do. So right now, Bellevue's total housing for the next 20 years is 35,000 housing units. Seattle is 112,000 housing units. And I can't really do the math in my head, but I can give you these numbers if you want the breakout for those two cities.
Keith, how did other counties do the same exercise, and did they come up with the same amount of housing needed?
So every county had to do the same exercise. The methodologies were different by county. So King County chose a methodology after some outreach to the cities within the county to kind of get a sense for what would be most kind of accepted. And the methodology that they used actually for Federal Way meant that we have less lower income housing than it would have if they used a different methodology. So in other words, because of those factors that they included, and one of the big factors for us is the price of our current housing, is it led to more of our housing being at a higher AMI level than if they would have just gone straight percentage across as a proportion of what the county needed, which was one of the choices for methodology. So what Snohomish County or Pierce County or Kitsap County did, I can't answer that question.
But every city in the state will be required to have more housing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the question I have is, I get it, we have to make it so people can build housing that's affordable and people informed, but how did we come up with, we're giving up on 942 people that they're not gonna make it? I mean, I look at these other cities, how many low income housing they have to do. I mean, we're basically as a society saying these people don't have a chance to make it in America because we're gonna take care of them from cradle to grave because we've decided 942 people, housing units, they don't have a chance to make it like everybody else. I mean, that's the disconnect I have. I think we should have great affordable housing, make our zoning so people want to build, but how do we come up with deciding who's going to lose and who's going to win? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
So I think, I guess,
I mean, it's
what I would say is this, it is forecasting a need, right? And I think the question is if those units are not provided at that level, then what do those people do? Do they leave? Do they end up cohabitating with other families so that they can afford something that's, otherwise renting at a higher AMI? There's a lot of different choices. And part of this is also kind of reaching back to the presentation you guys had at the study session is part of it is trying to come up with housing that doesn't overly burden people, because this all assumes that we're only paying 30% of our income for housing. There was a time in my life where I was paying more than 30% of my income for housing. So part of this is also, taking into account not overburdening families and providing kind of this bandwidth. But to your point, which I think was in there, is basically the reason why I focused at 80% and below AMI is none of that will be provided without some sort of incentive or subsidy. The market isn't going to do that.
right. Okay, thank you. Kelsey?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems to me as though, I mean, these numbers are theoretical targets. And personally, looking at the economics of it, I don't think there's any way in the world that it's going to be realized at all, and it's largely irrelevant, I think, because in the end, it's the economics that will determine what's built and what's not built, rather than some numbers put together by bureaucrats. That's my thoughts, and I don't know whether, anybody else has those same ideas or not, but anyway.
And that's why we're looking at some of these zones where maybe we can do some zoning to make it economically affordable for somebody to do that.
I think it's a great segue into the second part of this presentation, which is looking at certain parts of the city And I think the question to, or maybe the answer to you, Councilmember Walsh, is there needs to be some creativity, because there's not enough money to make these housing units happen at the income bands that we need to. I think that these numbers are forecasts of what demand is. The question that none of us have a crystal ball on is what happens if we can't provide the units at those levels. Where does that demand go? How does it transpire into maybe unconventional housing circumstances like, multiple families living together? So with that, I think we wanted to have a conversation about 324 to 336. I'm happy to kind of go through this conversation with you guys, and we can have some questions at the end to see where it goes from here. So the policy question in front of the City Council: should the city consider changes to zoning regulations or adding incentives to facilitate parcel redevelopment of this area? So the area is roughly 253 acres. It's the area that's in the green on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you can see that the zoning, there's kind of 3 different zones. The orange on the slide is the BC zone. So that's a true mixed-use zone. It allows for housing and retail and commercial development. And then the brown, everything else, there's actually 3 colors there. Those are 3 different gradations of multifamily housing. So this whole area is either multifamily or mixed-use zoning. And now we're going to kind of dive a little deeper. So this is the north half. The north half is 324th on the north and 330th down on the south. You can see the biggest thing in the north half is obviously Belmore Park. Belmore Park is 62 acres, and it's kind of immediately adjacent to our city center core, and hugs I-5. There's also a 6-acre parcel right here to the west of Belmore, which is zoned BC. This landowner has come in for numerous pre-application meetings, but not since the school impact fees went to 0. So my guess is this person who's kind of circling the wagons, so to speak, will be back in again to talk about development of this property. Now, part of the reason that developing this property is complicated is because we are asking for a street extension through the property to connect to Belmore. As you can see, Belmore is a giant piece of property without any street connectivity through it. And so part of, as we think about developing this parcel, we need to think about how would we extend streets to further break up this bigger parcel when it does come to redevelop. You can see there's 2 parcels down here. There's a Korean Baptist church, owns both of those properties. And there's about, maybe about 4 acres of extra land that could be redeveloped should the church choose to dispose of the property. There's a brand new house right here, so this empty parcel is no longer empty. You have a couple 1 acre parcels, you have 1 acre, 2 half-acre parcels down here, and then there's a 0.7 acre parcel on Pack Highway, just north of 330th, which is also vacant. So this is the north half, and now we're going to go to the south half. So the south half, you have a couple 2.6 acre parcels just south of 330th right here that are undeveloped. You have this big chunk of land in the middle of this, which is townhouse development called Creekside Commons. Creekside Commons is currently in permitting. They've been in permitting for, I want to say, like 3 years. It's been a while, and they're working on replacing a culvert now and getting kind of their construction documents finished, and I would expect that final plat to come in soon. You have a 2.6 acre parcel down here. The Ridgecrest Motel sits in this very southeast corner, but the rest of the property is currently undeveloped. Okay, so that's a summary about the north and south halves. So questions for a conversation with you guys. The first one is, what would the council like to see developed in this area? We've kind of gone through it at a very high level.
Can I ask a question before you go there?
Of course.
When you go back to those maps.
Yep.
You're showing vacant location, but the thing that strikes me, there's lots of properties there that are larger than normal.
Yep.
That if you were doing different zoning, people might say, I'm gonna tear down these two houses and put 5 there, or whatever it looks like. So I think if we're just looking at what's not built, we're not looking at the whole zoning picture, because there might be properties that people live in now that are underdeveloped, that you can maybe put 2 or 3 there instead of 1.
So absolutely. So, and this is one of the reasons why I think we're having this conversation. So one of the things that is, one of those many ordinances I need to get done before I get to the sign code is the ordinance that's responsive to House Bill 1110. And House Bill 1110 is the one that basically says we need to have up to 4 or 6 units per single-family lot. So that will be in front of you guys before this time next year. If it's this time next year, I'm late. We're due by June of next year. So some of these, so that will change, I think, maybe, and add to the conversation that we were just having, council member, is, if there's smaller lots or even bigger lots and there's room to put additional units in the backyard or side yard, front yard, that might be addressed with our code amendments that'll be responsive to 1110. And we're starting to work on that.
Councilmember, President?
Well, I'm just going to mention, I'm not sure, well, 2 questions, but I'll just do a quick one right now. I'm not sure what Creekside Commons is going to be. It's got a lot of development going there. I'm not sure what those are, whether they're buildings or townhouses or.
Those are townhouses. So they did a cottage project, I believe.
Okay.
And so those are all shared wall, small lots underneath.
Well, we were driving by, what's that? That guy's, the one who's the housing rental person that's always got the sign on Pack Highway, about 3. Zarin Sarah, yeah. Signed up for 1 studio, 1 bath, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, $1,200. So I think we do need we do need, I don't know of any studio apartments in Birdway. I know you can rent basements.
Yeah.
Right now. I'm sure there would be small houses, but we have no studio, no loft, no studio.
So some of the choices in terms of rentals will change a little bit with, what we anticipate is the housing that's going to happen near the light rail station will likely be smaller units, and studios, I would expect, will be part of that mix.
Okay, so then my second question is, what is going to happen with Belmore?
That is an awesome question. I think Tanya might want to speak on that because she knows a little bit about that. Since your hand was up, I'm assuming?
So we're in conversations with them to try to understand what they have plans for the future, but there's nothing that's been concretely discussed or concretely, set by either side. So definitely active and ongoing, but our goal would be, of course, that they might consider, doing something in the future, but of course it's up to them because it's their property.
So they have not approached the city with any redevelopment plans yet. I think Tanya was trying to reach out and see what their interest level would be in terms of, talking about future of the property. So I think at this point, we don't know.
Is it the same fella in Canada? Same ones?
Yeah, and one of the things, and Councilmember Dovey and I had this conversation a while back, is one of the things we don't necessarily want to do is upzone their property, because it would be better for us to work with a buyer and see if they would want to do something different through a development agreement or a rezone at that time, as opposed to speculatively just increase the value of it, which might mean it just stays that way for quite a bit longer.
I have a question.
Councilmember Honda?
So I have a few questions. Where are the test tracks that Sound Transit will be putting in along I-5? Where are they located on this map? Because they say they're going to run 24/7.
Good thing we have Sound Transit people here.
Yep.
Did you want to take that one, Kent?
I'm curious about
All
that
right.
because I don't know that all this needs to be housing in the future. And I sure wouldn't want housing located next to where a train's going to be running constantly.
Let's see if I can go back to that last slide. So basically, if you see the line of houses in Belmore Park on the very east side of the property, it's the main line of the track will run roughly in that location, and then just next to that would be the test track. And their plan would be to run it during normal hours, not 24 hours a day.
So that the press release that came out last week said 24/7. That's where I got that from.
No, they typically run their test track off hours, and so that's probably why they got the confusion that way, but they do that on the normal track line, so that's why they have to do it on the off hours. But the test track will allow them to run it during normal hours of the day, and rather than do it I think it's between like 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. or something like that when they would have to do
That's
it
when
if
they'd
they
run it.
didn't have a test track. With the test track, they can run it in normal hours, so sometime between, typically in the mornings and during the day, so.
But
So-
once,
Are there two tracks that they're building then?
Effectively, so they'd have a main line, and then just to the east of that, like essentially right next to it, would be the test track. It's just a short stretch that basically would run from the top, about the top of the page down to the bottom on the map.
So at some point, there won't be any trains running during the, is that what you're saying?
There will be a portion of time when there'll be no trains running, because they wouldn't need to run their testing of trains, because they have a test track they can run when the regular trains are on the regular track. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so, but I still think that some of this can be a business park instead of just all housing. If people wanted, if there is a developer who wanted to do that and people wanted to sell their properties. Not Belmar, somewhere in this area.
Yeah.
well,
Thank you.
once the Tacoma Link is done, though, Kent, then there'd be trains running continually. We wouldn't just be talking about the test track, but once the Tacoma Link is finished, then there would be trains 24 hours a day.
No, I don't believe so.
So I think the press release that Councilmember Honda is referring to is talking about the buildings themselves, which is, to your point, a 24-hour-a-day facility where they're doing maintenance on the trains and cleaning trains and doing that. That work has to happen when the trains are effectively offline, which is effectively 1 a.m. to 5 or 4 a.m. So that's the 24-hour-a-day portion of it. The same hours that the trains are not running on the track when they take everything out of service, there will be nothing that happens on the track. But during operational hours, yes, once the Tacoma Dome Link extension is done, the trains will go through here to basically go from north down to Tacoma. That will happen during their regular operating hours. The test track is for breaking in new trains and for testing repairs. So right now, like if you go to the Soto Station repair facility or you go up to the Bellevue test facility, when they repair a train, the only track that they have to actually test it and make sure that the repairs were done correctly are the primary track. And the only time they can use that is when the track is not in operation, AKA the middle of the night. With this, they're building a mile of track specifically for training operators and testing repairs on the trains so that that can happen during the day when they're more fully staffed. So the test track itself is not intended to be used at night. It's intended to be used for training as well as testing repairs so they don't have to use the mainline track, if that makes sense.
So
But
when we went to the facility up in Soto, they brought the trains in at 1, and then they started taking them out at 4.
Correct.
So that's only 3 hours that you're not using the track.
And that part will all be the same, but what happens between 1 and 4 AM will be limited to inside the buildings, just like it was at Soto. So that part all remains the same, but what you didn't see at Soto is like if they change out a truck, the wheels that are on the train, they take it out on the main line to test that before they put it back into operation. So that is the part that will not occur at this facility.
Okay.
And to your comment, Councilmember Honda, I think both Tanya and I would both say that if we were to be able to pick what redevelops on Belmore at some point, definitely having some commercial retail mixed in with housing would be, I think, both our choices.
You know, if before COVID, I think right before COVID, Belmore owners came and they had quite an extensive plan as to what they wanted there. Is that no longer an interest of theirs?
Was that the one with the, like, the high rises and
Yeah,
the?
light rail station,
Yeah,
all sorts of stuff.
that one's not fundable in a real world. That one, I think, had EV5 money tied into it, and all of that is not part of anybody's conversation right now.
Okay, just wondering, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh. So with the, this Creekside Commons
Yes,
development,
yes.
the townhouses?
Yes.
You said that it's been in permitting for 3 years?
Yes.
Is that because they keep changing the plans for permitting, or is that because with our delays with permitting process, or a combination of two, or what? I mean, 3 years for permitting seems a long time. There must be some reasons for that.
There are probably some very documentable reasons. I would say that most of the reason for that long timeline has been the developer and the work that they're doing out on site.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll just step in. I'm not going to say too many details about that project specifically, but that one's also quite complicated because it requires redoing of a, help me, Jim, forgetting the culvert. It requires culvert replacement in that area where there's a stream crossing. And that alone has been a significant obstacle for the developer, which is largely outside of the city's control because it's controlled by state, federal permitting. So suffice to say, that one's quite a complicated project. For a project that's that complex, 3 years unfortunately isn't that long.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I'm not, for those listening at home, because I know people do, I'm not suggesting that Belmore Park become an industrial or business park, but somewhere in the area, I think it would be a good idea to have a business park here in Federal Way.
Continue on.
I think we're done. I think the question is for you guys, this was just a kind of an exploratory conversation. And I think the question for you all is, you know, we've kind of looked at some properties, there's some stuff kind of out there. But overall, are you wanting to have staff explore either some incentives or some changes to regulations? We've also batted around some ideas about trying to do a pilot project of some kind where, you know, maybe it's just one parcel and we work with a property owner. You know, we brought in a number of builders a year ago to talk about redeveloping TC3. You know, we could bring in some single-family builders and have some conversations about, like, what would it take you to come in here and start, you know, looking at doing 2s and 3s instead of 1s. So I think this is just, you know, looking for you guys to maybe see if there's any action you want staff to take. Otherwise, we'll put this away for now and address it again maybe some other time.
Well, I'll answer the question as I see it. I'm the one who asked you to kind of bring this forward. I believe we need to pick an area like this one, be creative on permitting, be creative on what we would let happen, so that we're telling developers and property owners, this is an area we'd like to have redeveloped. We want it more denser, we want it with more affordable housing potentially, and make it so that it's so appealing that people will say, if I'm going to look anywhere in King County, Federal Way's designated, 300 acres or what, how many acres is this area?
Like 250.
250. They have 250 acres that are fertile ground. Let's go plant some seeds and see if we can grow some corn. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I don't know if my other counterparts want to take the risk, but I think doing what we're doing now is not working. And if we're going to get there, we better pick an area, and if nobody takes advantage of it, we haven't lost anything. But if we get creative and maybe some nonprofits go, hey, this is a great place for us to invest in, housing for single women with kids, and we want to make this the place or whatever, we just need to pick an area and see if we can make it happen. That's my thought. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, with that, kind of in that line, I mean, is it possible to just, right now not do, basically let them know that, hey, come to us with ideas, and if it's.
Well, we got to throw the ideas out. Don't come to us.
But they may have ideas also, and that we're open to your suggestions, and we will work with you to adjust the zoning accordingly if it fits that higher density and lower cost thing. So that let them be, we don't have all the answers. I mean, you have a lot of answers, but I don't think all the answers, but they may have some answers that could work. And is that possible to say, hey, we're open. We're open for stuff, so.
My only argument to that, and I see we have a question over here, instead of saying we're just open, let's ask the date out first and see if they want to come and come up with some creative things, and they may come back and say, hey, yeah, if you do this and let us paint it red, we'll even do 10 of them. I don't know. But I think we need to make the first step. Tanya, you were ready.
I just wanted to actually build on what you're saying, and something that economic development is actively working on is kind of addresses that pretty exactly in the downtown core. So over 250 plus acres. We are actively involved in a grant that is. Well, first off, we're building a pipeline of investors and developers, so having those active conversations, just like you said. We also are actively kind of going as fast as we can to talk to all of the property owners that are in that area, because obviously it's their private property. So one thing that we really want to make sure of is that, when we do talk about anyone's property, that they give us permission, and obviously if they don't, we won't. But what the plan is with the grant, which we hope to receive in Q3, Q4, is that we will put together kind of a downtown vision, and maybe loosely defined as some kind of a visionary master plan based on what the development is that's happening now and how we see could be some reasonable possibilities, again, just conceptual ideas for redevelopment. And so that would be a visual 3D kind of fly through of that area that would serve as kind of the sales tool to be able to further the discussions with investors and developers. But we are actively talking to investors and developers and sharing the vision, but of course it's a lot harder conversation to either bring them physically, as we've been doing, to the PAC, to physically show them, what's happening in kind of a vision, but also, hopefully they'll serve as a easier tool.
And one more comment, and then Councilmember Honda. With the train, with the, Sound Transit taking over the church, which is going to be a whole bunch of people wondering what's going on just south of this, and with the development going on the mall and the uncertainty of what Sound Transit might be doing with what they're taking out of Belmore Park, I mean, there's some land that's going to go. This is a perfect time to tee it all up, and because there's going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of people, what's my house going to do now that the Sound Transit's coming in 6 years or 5 years and mall's redesigning. So this is a perfect time to say, hey, here's a canvas, and we're gonna put it out there and paint a little bit of it and bring us some other ideas. So anyway, Councilmember Honda, your turn.
So the area around where the skating rink is, where El Centro del Raza is, will be eventually redeveloped too. And at least that's what I've been hearing. And so I'm hoping that it's not one area is developed without the other area. You know, it needs to be some kind of cohesion. And I'm also, so I'm curious, are you already talking to the property owners and what are you hearing from them? Are they interested in redeveloping? Are they interested in staying there? What are you hearing?
It's a mixed bag. So, you know, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg where, you know, there's some families that have owned the property for one or more generations and they just want to continue on. B, there's families that want to kind of understand the bigger vision of what's going on. And so we're having active discussions with them, phone calls, you know, Zoom, showing them pictures, going to their properties. And then there's others that just don't know how to start. And so, you know, just last week, or 2 weeks, well, a week and a half ago, I had a conversation with a property owner that has a rather, you know, larger piece of property down there. And they asked for kind of guidance on, hey, how do we actually do this? We'd like to develop it. So it's really a mixed bag, but it's also a little bit of chicken and egg because you want to make sure that, you know, these private property owners don't feel like they're getting, you know, kind of railroaded or forced into something because it is their land.
It might be worthwhile after we know exactly what's happening with Sound Transit. I realize that they did choose the church property for the OMF, but to have a community meeting with these folks so that they can come and meet everyone and give their ideas and their thoughts and hear from them as to what they would be interested in, since it is their property.
Well, it sounds like you got no direction at all.
Well.
Because we're all over the board.
Heard some ideas, and I think that, you know, obviously, we're going to see what the code revisions look like as it relates to 1110, because that's coming soon. As it relates to, you know, the OMF facility on Christian Faith Center potentially flipping over Pack Highway over to Kitts Corner. You know, those both will likely be development agreements. You know, I think that as certain things start to move, it will trigger other things moving as well. Even getting Creekside Commons going vertical, I think will put a spotlight on this part of the city. In terms of maybe kind of ideas, but we can talk about this a little bit further down the road. I like the idea of trying to get a pilot going, trying to have some conversations with builders. I also agree that they know what they need to, you know, and maybe it's registered plans, maybe it's looking at fee waivers in terms of permit fees. You know, might be expedited permit reviews. Maybe 3 years is not okay for people looking to get return on their investment. So I think there's things that conversations we can have to try and get a better glimpse of how to be effective in actually moving some of this forward.
So can I ask the committee members of the land use, are you willing, I mean, we're not voting on it because it's not an action item, but are you willing to give Keith the ability to come back with some ideas and make proposals to us on how we could take this area and maybe make it a test area for creative permitting or whatever that term is, without voting on it?
Right. So, I'm listening from all of you, and you shared information, and especially from Tanya, where she already get in touch with those property owners. I think the city can do both, meaning that under the leadership of CD, Keith and his staff can put out some guidance or guideline to those investor and property owners, right? But at the same time, we invite those people to give us what is it that they want to do, and then we can we can combine those two and come up with something. So we can do both, not just wait for one or the other.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that give you some clearer instructions?
Absolutely,
Okay. Thank you.
absolutely. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time. Okay, now we'll move to item J, progress update on Sound Transit. Mr. Smith.
Good evening. I'm still presenting. So, good evening. Ken Smith with the Public Works Department. I'm here to do the Sound Transit activities update in the city of Federal Way. So for north of 317th, so north part of the city, still continuing with a lot of landscaping, ballast installation, rail distressing, fencing installation. They're starting some of the final storm ponds and vaults. The signal house and traction power substation work is continuing with some conduit installation, electrical connections, CMU wall installation. Still tracking on the traffic mitigation project, which affects the portion of South 272nd Street and SR 99. And they're still expected to begin this summer, but I believe they're still looking to do some final property acquisitions. For the city center area, we're still on one-way traffic for northbound 23rd Avenue. They're continuing to work on South 317th Street, completing the northernmost travel lanes and the curb gutter and sidewalk, which also includes some retaining walls. Roadway work for the new internal roads is continuing with asphalt and concrete roadway installation, as well as sidewalks, curb and gutter. The construction of the new bus loop is ongoing with their decorative paving now commencing, which is the paving adjacent to the main bus loop itself where the pedestrians walk. And then bus shelter furnishings, which is kind of setting up for the stop locations for all the buses. Station work is continuing. Site signage, furnishings, guardrails, plaza communication devices, and some painting. They're on to final site work for end of line and the bus driver relief buildings, which is mainly focused on site lighting and the final service treatments. Internal work for the garage continues, still with some HVAC trim, interior painting, signage, and they're working on some final exterior work, which will involve removing some of the shoring, which is adjacent to 21st Avenue, and then they'll move on to some final protective cladding and then the final frontage improvements. And end-of-line interior work is wrapping up. For the operations and maintenance facility, as of June 7th, they published their final environmental impact statement. And then on June 27th, the Sound Transit Board officially selected the preferred alternative, which is South 336th Street, as the project to be built. Following that, FTA will follow up with a record of decision. And they don't have an exact time frame, but it'll have final recommendations from FTA. And then just as a note, the Sound Transit BPA and the city are continuing to collaborate on relocation of the BPA power transmission lines, as well as how that factors into Sound Transit's project and the city's city center access project in that same location. And then for Tacoma Dome Link Extension, still looking at sometime in 2024 for DEIS publication. It sounds like it's shifting a little into the fall, but otherwise no significant updates. And I'll answer any questions.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, on the, go back to a couple of slides back on, yeah, on the 23rd and 317th, is there a timeline on when, obviously that impacts traffic here in Federal Way a lot and businesses there. Is there a timeline when that's expected to be opened again?
There's a couple of issues they ran into. One was some abandoned sewer line work that they needed to do along, it's adjacent to South 320th, but it's not actually in the roadway. They needed to get that all the way removed before they could finish some of the final pieces of 23rd Avenue itself. There's a slip lane they need to build, along with some final sidewalk. And before they do that, they can't fully switch it back to two-way traffic. Otherwise, it would just kind of go bouncing back and forth between. In theory, they could switch it to two-way traffic right now, but it's just like they're going to have to get back and pave in that location, so they can't do that without that there. The exact time frame, I'm not totally sure. 3/17th, I believe, is tracking for end of August to move to a different phase, but which I think will allow the two-way traffic with the left turn lane, a two-way left turn lane in the middle for that portion. And then, but they'll still be continuing to work on the roundabout section.
Okay, all right. And then another question, what's the latest on artwork? I mean, is there the new replacement for the handstand performing elephant, I mean?
I don't have any updates. From what I understand, the artist is still working on final design. They don't have anything to share as far as a different exhibit. I ask them typically every couple of weeks, and it's still working on it. It's actively in design, and then when they do have something to share, they'll bring it forward.
Because I have an idea that, they're probably, they don't listen to us on anything else, but anyway. But a giant Sasquatch standing on the ground peering into the station, kind of like the Blue Bear in Denver, or people would come to Federal Way to get pictures of that there and see that. And so it would not just be artwork, but it could be an attraction. Now, the chance of them doing anything like that is probably nil, but I think it would be great. So pass it on.
I can certainly
Write a
make a
letter.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Send it to our representative. Okay, Councilmember Honda, you're waiting patiently down there.
Thank you. Have any properties been purchased in Belmore Park yet, or any residents relocated?
I believe they've been in property acquisition discussions because they got funding to work towards early acquisitions, but most of it's been involved with kind of pointing out the properties that they're interested in. I don't think they've made any offers officially yet. I think they're waiting for their record of decision. So as of the last time I asked, that was the case.
How many properties will be purchased, or how many lots? Or how many families will be relocated?
I would have to check. I think it was somewhere in the range of 11 of the units needed to be relocated. But then there was additional that relate to the City Center Access Project, but are just slightly in that same vicinity.
Okay, and do they build a sound barrier wall between homes and the track?
So in their DEIS and FEIS, there's a section on sound, and I believe there's a portion that gets built in that Belmore Park area that it depends on what the sound of the existing, what that noise level is, and what the expected increase in noise level will be with the train. And they do a couple of things. One, they can park an instrument, and they get actual noise levels, and then they compare it to the expected with the train. And if it exceeds a certain level, then they will install noise barriers. They don't necessarily have to at every situation. Sometimes their train ends up slightly below the level of where the housing or whatever is next to, so they don't expect to build a noise wall, but it just depends on the location.
Will there be a noise wall at the maintenance yard on 336, so the folks who live across the street, if they still live across the street in the future, won't be bothered 24/7?
My understanding is no, but they do they did do an analysis of what that noise level would be with the maintenance facility itself, and a lot of what is actually loud occurs inside, within the facility, so that the walls of the building itself will block most of that noise.
I would say when we were at that Soto yard, the trains just moving back and forth outside, blowing their whistles or their horns whenever they moved, was now noisy and loud. So I would imagine if you lived close by, you'd hear that.
It should have been it is a thing they built into their environmental impact statement, so there is a portion of noise that covers that exact, for the OMF facility, that covers that exact site and what the noise level is expected to be during operation of every portion, moving the trains, whether that's the case, or doing the operations inside. So they looked at that level and then compared it to what the existing is, and they didn't see a need to add noise walls, at least along the edge of 336.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Before we adjourn, I just want to make sure everybody knows that our next meeting, we should have the work on the motorhomes in the neighborhoods. So that's a highlight for next month. Yes, Councilor Walsh?
And there may be some related comment about some things concerning motorhomes and parking in tomorrow evening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's somebody that was upset about the fact that their driveway is 18 feet in width and their motorhome is 20 feet in width, and they're not being allowed to park on there.
Well, they're 2 feet too long, right?
Well, no,
I
it's,
don't-
There's been some,
yeah, upset.
Well, that's not coming to land use next month unless,
no.
but somebody might talk about it tomorrow, is what you're saying.
Yeah, from
So it may
Alderbrook.
impact what we want to do with the motorhome ordinance.
May or may not.
Yeah. So
Okay. Anyway, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you all for attending. Bye.